Nigel, one more game to go in a season. As you look back across the campaign as a whole, how do you assess it? The sort of the highs, the lows, the progress that's been made.
I think it's more about the fact that we know that we're on the right track. We've still had some disappointments with not being able to win as many games as we would like, and we've had some difficult spells during the season. But I don't feel that they haven't been as maybe as tough as the year before. I think we've made some good progress. I think some of our young players continue to really make big improvements, and because of that, we've been able to move forward as a team. Some of our senior players have had some really good seasons too. So we just need to get that added ingredient now of being able to win more games when we're probably not at our best. And to do that, it'll be important that we get the right types of additions in the summer.
I think we've known that that's the sort of the area.
Yeah.
We've seen some growth, and there needs to be more.
Yeah.
Are there parts of the team, of your play, that you've been really happy with, that you look back and think, actually, you know what, we've really done what I hoped we've done this season?
Well, I think we've played some really exciting football. It's nice to have pace. The overall fitness of the whole of the squad now is much improved. So I don't know what the stats are at the moment in terms of player availability, but we work very hard at making sure that that's as high as possible, just because we do operate with a smaller squad. And I think those things together are really very important aspects of whether you can have a good season or not. When we've missed some of our important players for sustained spells, I think they've coincided with us having a bit more of a difficult time. But I also think that players who have played out of position have done exceptionally well to do a very good job for the side too. So all those things together have contributed to what's been a season of promise that's had some disappointments and some one or two tricky spells where the response from the players has been excellent, and they've been able to go out there and really put together some exciting results as well. So yeah, we'll see where we go. But I think this summer is going to be very important for us. How we progress next year, I think, is going to be the biggest indicator. Really, we've had 2 years of cutting back and trying to reshape, and now we need to try and push on. I think that's the big thing, and we all know that. It's not a secret. And we know that we'd like to be pushing for the playoffs and being in the promotion shake-up. That's what every club wants to do. But to achieve that, we're going to have to make sure that we get it right this summer.
And it's probably the first transfer window since you've been here where you've got not money to spend, but you're not looking at sort of cutting costs in one way, and there is a little bit more leeway in the areas you're able to shop in. How has that worked in terms of building up for this and looking at scouting certain players and getting your targets all sort of lined up?
Well, we'll still be spinning plates. We'll still be trying to keep the books balanced. Don't worry about that. It's not going to be one where all of a sudden there's a limitless amount of resources. It's not like that. And there may be opportunities to trade too, but as I said before, we want to try and keep the best players. And I'm aware that Phil made a comment the other day in an interview where he said that decisions will be made when decisions have to be made, and I don't disagree with that. It's one where I don't want people to make expectations about what will happen this summer, because we may have to resist offers for other players too, and that will be an interesting situation if it arises.
one player who is sticking around for a bit longer, Rob Atkinson, signing his new deal. Obviously, unfortunately, not able to be playing at the moment, but somebody who, out of a number of young players, has shown a significant degree of growth, I think, this season.
Yeah, Rob's had again, he's had one or two spells in the season where I think he's just not been in top form, but he's shown, and quite rightly you say, he's shown some signs of his own game developing. I think that's really important for us, and it's just a sensible thing to protect our assets. It's also, I would hope for him, a bit of a shot in the arm that we want to extend his contract while he's currently injured, and he's. I think this is the first time he's had a serious injury, so it will be something for him to reflect on. And I'm a big believer in that how players overcome disappointments, especially with serious injuries, can be in the long term quite beneficial, because I think it tests your ability to, or rather it tests your hunger, and whether you are, I think for young players in particular, when they get injuries, it's all of a sudden you can't take anything for granted, because with serious injuries it can be one which threatens your livelihood, and I think that is a real leveller. But Rob's dealing with it very, very well, and he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
And another young player that you've got sort of to a longer term deal, which helps to secure that future. We know you've got a couple of out of contract players. In terms of timelines, when would you expect to be telling them, if you haven't already, we'd like you to stay, this is the offer, or your future's likely to be elsewhere?
Well, again, it will be done relatively soon now. I mean, the season finishes on the start of next week, so all those things will be decided, and the players will know first, of course. So, in terms of that, my stance is the same. I don't have anything else to add at this point in time.
That's fair enough.
Okay.
In terms of incomings, this is what happens. You get linked with Will and his wife, Joe Bryan, somebody who also played here previously, one of those that has been linked. Is that got any truth to it? Is there any interest there?
Well, we're always looking to improve, and rather than answer it simply with a yes or no, we're going to try and strengthen, and we'll see which players are doable for us. And so I'm not, again, I don't really enjoy too much speculating on these types of stories, because you'll know when we're interested or are looking to sign a player when it's appropriate, and that is when things are either agreed. Well, things have to be agreed between clubs and, of course, the player. And there'll be players who will be attractive to lots of football clubs, and so whether we are interested or not, there's still quite a lot of work to be done before those types of deals were done. For somebody like a Joe Bryan who's been here before, let's be absolutely clear, the only way that we would be interested is it wouldn't be a sentimental journey. It would be one in which if he's very keen to be a success here, then obviously that's an important aspect of it. We only want to go out there and bring players in who are hungry for success and want to improve us as a football club and themselves individually. So all those things just remain the same. Like I say, it's an important window for us, because we need to get the balance right between adding players with experience and know-how, but also keeping our very vibrant identity that we have now, and that is a team which can which can pit our wits against any side in this division. And I think that's one of the most important improvements this season.
I think if memory serves, when Brian Tinney was talking about it earlier in the summer, he was talking in terms of numbers, sort of 3 or 4. Does that sound about right in terms of a ballpark that you're looking to add?
Maybe. It depends how far we can stretch our resources, and depending whether the players that we would like to bring in are doable. Because I think you've heard me say before, I don't really want to collect players, and if we can't get the players that we want, I'm not wasting money.
One last chance to go out and earn 3 points this season away at Queen's Park Rangers. I mean, there's not a match that you don't want to win. Is it more, not important, but is it particularly nice to walk away at the end of the season with a positive feeling from 3 points?
Yeah, it would be. It would be very important for us to finish the season with a win, because it sets the scene really for when we come back. But they've had a really difficult time, and then from nowhere have picked up some results which have put them in a decent position. So. But look, I want our players, whoever, I'm not going to mess about too much with the team. There may be 1 or 2 changes, there may not. We've not decided yet, but whoever starts, the expectations will be exactly the same. And that is, I want us to go out there and put in a really good performance. I remember when I was at Hull City and we'd broken the club record for the longest away run of games unbeaten, something like 17, and we actually played at Bristol City on the last game of the season, and it was awful. Bristol City won 3-0 and we were crap, and it's infuriating, because what it does, it doesn't undo all the good work, but what it does, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And so what you need to do, or what we need to do, is finish the season with a positive performance, which gets us more points. And that's really what it's all about, because, again, these are situations that you learn quite a bit about your players. Who's got the motivation? Who's got the inner drive to go and play regardless of what the situation is? So the pressure of performance is quite an interesting thing to look at. You know, some players really struggle with big games, and some players are just brilliant in big games and can't raise themselves for other games. So what we need to establish is the team's work ethic to be exactly the same, whether it be QPR on the last day of the season, Man City in the FA Cup. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. And we've come unstuck in games like Lincoln City this year with exactly that, where some players have just not turned up, and it's infuriating. So, but what it also does, it clarifies how you take the squad forward too. So all those things are, although in the moment there are emotional attachments to those types of events where you feel a bit of anger, and actually what it does, it clarifies where we are and what we need to do. So I don't ever worry too much about that in the longer term. It's more about how we're able to manage any match day experience, and that is, we need to always be at our best.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And Nigel, you've spoken about the improved fitness and the way that the young players have come along this season. I just want to know from your perspective, what's been the most notable or biggest evolution of this team over the last 12 months?
Well, I suppose we've gone back to 4-3-3, which I quite like playing anyway, and it suits the players that we have. So that's probably been the most important change during the season. is the ability to go back to 4-3-3, maybe the necessity of it too, because we got to a point where we were not really creating too much, and I think we've continued, not all the time, to be very creative, but we've been in every game more or less, and I suppose that's something that when we as staff look back at it, it's encouraging, but it's also frustrating too, because when you've been in every game, it means you've got a potential to win them. You know, and we've not converted promising situations often enough. So those are areas that we need to work at. But as I've already pointed out, that in the past we've either been decent and got a result, or we've been unable to perform at the levels that we're looking for, and that's again those are setbacks which I think are a bit more difficult to deal with. And hopefully our fan base would give you the better idea, and that would be asking them how they feel. And I think we've done pretty well with our season ticket sales so far, which I think suggests that there is optimism, but you can only keep people's optimism bubbling, or simmering rather, by improving and looking to see and being brutally honest about where we are and how we get to the next level. So, you know, the fans generally speaking have been pretty tolerant of our not inability to push on, but they've seen, I think, some progress. There may be a bit of excitement in terms of what may be possible because of so many young players coming through our system as well. So we don't want to go down a different route now. It's really important that we try and harness what's positive at the football club by adding the right ingredients, and that's quite a sensitive touch that you need to do that. It's not about just being heavy-handed, going out and wanting to bring loads of players in, because that doesn't really lend itself to developing what we've got here. You know, I've worked at clubs where I think it's fair to say every club I've worked at, when I've left the club, I think everyone's been in a better position, and it's not always about just the results. You know, and I think Leicester City would be a really good example of a club which had a very clear identity. I'm not sure you could necessarily say that now, although Dean going in there with Shaky, you know, they've picked up some decent results, and it's about clarity, it's about a simple message of understanding what's expected on the pitch. So, you know, all those things, I think we've moved forward in lots of ways, but of course it's ultimately going to be about results, getting enough results.
I think we spoke to Harry Cornick a couple of weeks ago, and he said this team can still be a bit more streetwise in the way they play.
Yeah.
Obviously you agree with that sentiment.
Well, yeah, you've heard me say it loads of times. I think we've got better, but there's still work to do. But then, having said that, that's one of the trade-offs with having younger players, and also some of our more senior players. You know, you've heard me say in the past, I quite like one or two thugs around the place. They're quite handy on a match day. You know, there are areas to improve, but it doesn't take too much to shift that if you get the right person in who is able to teach a bit of that. Because again, players are the best coaches. Younger players will listen more to the senior players than they will to me.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you kind of get that more streetwise factor into the players. Is that ingrained, or does that come with bringing in
I'm
experience?
learning from experiences. I think that's how most of us learn. If I just tell you something, you might go, yeah, and get it, but you only really get it when you do it and find out, oh yeah, now I know how it feels. It's not just about knowing it and understanding it, it's about feeling it too. And we've come up against that, especially when we played at Luton away, where, I mean, they were on the day exactly what they are, and that is a really competent championship side with players who know how to tweak the game and the rules, but in the best possible way,
Sure.
in a gamesmanship way.
I know, so you wanted to get business done early, right at the end of the season. Has there been any progress at all? Is there any deals that are kind of close?
Well, I've already answered that, haven't I? Yeah, because Ed asked me, and you'll know about it when we're at a point where it's, there's no point, teasing you along when we're not at a point to disclose it. But look, we've been very, very active. Let's put it like that. But the only time that you'll hear things from me in particular will be when deals are closed or are done, because otherwise anything can happen.
Yeah. I think you said to me a couple of weeks ago that there was a player that you wanted who's joined another team.
Yeah.
I guess there's numerous factors about why that can happen. But I want to ask about the wage structure, and is that the biggest challenge to bringing players in, fitting it in that wage structure?
Well, only in the sense that we know what we want to pay. So there are lots of clubs who are not as well placed as us. So we can be competitive, but there'll be times that we just can't compete with other clubs. And that's, you don't really be moaning about it. All I do with that then is go, right, move on. It's not doable. And so we've worked hard to try to manage what the wage structure looks like. I think it's really important that we continue to work hard to keep it competitive internally too. I don't want a big discrepancy within the squad, but I also think it's important that players earn the right to get paid more. So we're not all of a sudden going to go with young players who have been on an appropriate wage to sort of put them up with the high earners just because they've had one good season. Hey, that's not going to happen, because I don't believe in that. You've got to do it over a sustained period, and that's the big thing. It's about earning your stripes, earning the right, and for our lads who are some of our better earners, the expectation of them is to make sure that they don't become comfortable, that they keep performing and setting the right example. So all these things help to create a culture which is competitive. And that's what we need more than anything. We need, because, the tactical side of it, people want to talk about football sometimes. And what they always forget is that actually the most healthy environments and the most competitive sides are the ones that have an atmosphere and a feeling that is very much moving in the same direction. So you've got to spend as much time developing that and recognising people who don't fit into that.
Can you ask about the goalkeeping situation? Obviously, Max O'Leary's number one. It's his shirt to lose. Got Badgett coming back. Was Richards also third choice? Is that an area that you will look at over the pre-season with Badgett coming up? Would you like to add a bit more experience in that department?
Would I? Well, again, there would be a possible argument to say that can you get a more experienced number 2 in? There would be that type of an argument. Having said that, I think Harvey's developed really nicely. Steph's had a bit of a difficult experience over in France. I think we're going to have a look at it and see in pre-season. There'll be opportunities to look at those players in games to see where we feel that they're at, and then the decisions will be made from there. So, I mean, there is an argument to say that you could look at getting a more senior number 2, but again, that sort of sits outside of what I've been talking about in having a young, hungry squad. But clearly, the goalkeeping position is slightly. Sometimes you need a steadier head there, but it's not a massive priority at the moment, just because there are other areas that I think I would rather invest some of our budget towards, and like I say, Harvey's come on very well.
How's Eamon Benarous doing? We haven't really had an update.
He's back out in the grass again, so he's in his rehab ×2, and he's coping very well. I think of course, with an injury like that, where he's done it twice now, as he gets closer to being, nearing full fitness, I suppose the nerves will kick in a little bit, but we do everything that we can to make sure he's as well placed to make a full comeback as possible. So, but it's been a tough time for him, because as with most of these injuries, when they happen, it's quite innocuous, and then he looked fine when he came back from the first one, and it just sort of ruptured doing almost, not a lot. So difficult for him, but we'll support him as much as we can.
With Rob, he's going to miss the start of the season with his injury. Is that the case with Eamon as well?
I can't give you an absolute date on Eamon.
I suspect I probably already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. With the awards tomorrow night, do you have a player of the season that's kind of stood out for you this season?
What, and you expect me to name that now?
That was my...
Just to ruin the awards night. I look at things through probably different sort of eyes than you. There are players who I think have had some really... have had good seasons, for different reasons. And... but, players that would... If you want me to name a few, I would say that I think Zach Viner's had a really good season. Obviously, Alex Scott continues to be a player who people would look at and say is developing nicely. Pringer's had a decent season too. I think Max has had a, He's done exceptionally well. He's done really, really well. His presence behind the back four has been quite outstanding, really. And I think Mark Sykes has had a really good season for us too. There's lots, Tommy. I could look at most of them and say there aren't too many players who I would. Who are still here, actually, who would be having negative equity, let's put it like that. So Matty James has proved how important he is. There are really many stories which have been, I think, positive on individual levels. So it means that we need to continue to develop the ethic of the team itself, to make sure that all those positive individual stories become what is the most important thing, and that is a successful team story.
Thanks,
because that's all I'm bothered about.
Thank you.
I know. You mentioned earlier the players' response from a couple of tricky spells this season has been excellent. Cal Naismith was speaking earlier this week about how the side's building positive habits in terms of keeping standards high at all times to set the building blocks for success for next season going forward. Have you seen that progression over the year in the squad?
Yeah. I mean, things like we'd had loads of stick for and criticism for defending set plays, and we are, compared to most sides, quite small, but we've been much better this season since we've changed our approach to how we defend them, and I think Max has played a big part in that too. We've been able to deal with a lot of very physical teams with a bit more. I think at least a bit. We've been more streetwise in those regards, but look, it's always about trying to add those layers on top of each other, and the next time you concede one from a set play, then it's then becomes the back to where you were. But actually, we're not. We are more competent at that. But that's something we have to continue to work at, especially when you give away quite a bit of physicality. So, but look, I've been really pleased with the collective mentality of trying to make sure that the team comes first. I think that's something that I always like to see in teams, and that is that there is the spirit and the endeavour of the group is the most important thing. And I think we've got better at that this season, and hopefully again after another good pre-season, we can move forward.
Yeah, and obviously the end of the season is a time where players find out their futures. There will be some younger players in the academy, not just here but around the country, that their time will be coming to an end at. What would be your advice to them, and how important is it for clubs to support players like that in their next steps?
Well, look, it's really important we try and produce players for us, but also if they can't play for us, then we try and produce them for the game. I think, look, there are. You look at Anis Mehmeti, who's dealt with rejection, and he's been prepared then to not just reinvent himself, but fight his way back in. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the journey. What it will do is it tests whether they still want to play football. And unfortunately, there's probably too many players who when they don't make it, drift out. So it's about them being able to ask themselves as much as anything whether they want to continue to play and whether there is a way back in. Because for a lot of players, the non-league scene is a very vibrant scene, and us here, we're always very, very active with keeping our eyes very alert for players who come on a little bit later. So it's not necessarily the end of the journey, but of course this is one of the problems with that I don't think people recognise enough. And when the youngsters start their journey, I think it's really important not to be overly brutal, but they've got to understand what it might look like, and it's a huge commitment for families to support their children through academy journeys. A lot of investment of time and energy, and the reality is that it doesn't end in success for a lot of them. So, but our job is to make sure that the experience that they have is still a positive one. So we can help with teaching them things that will help them in their journey through life, and that's the big thing about it. So football is why they're here, but it's not all of it. It's about educating them, supporting them, and seeing whether our job is to give them a positive experience, whether they're successful in making it with us or not.
Yeah. And just on Kane Wilson, obviously he's had his injury troubles since he's been here. You mentioned before his fitness wasn't getting back to the standard as quickly as you or he would have liked. Do you think a good pre-season now is exactly what he needs to try and kind of start afresh from next season?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and he's been training well. So, he's we'll see what the future brings, eh?